The majority of 80s action figure toy lines were focused on a central conflict between a team of good guys and a crew of bad guys. The agents of Mask were tireless in their efforts to thwart the evil schemes of Venom. The Force of Freedom did battle against Savage. Superheroes fought supervillains, and the A-Team combated the, bad guys? Seriously, that was their name, the bad guys. I really hope Galoob didn't actually pay a writer to come up with that title. Yet when these franchises saw any kind of longevity, they typically introduced new subgroups to reinvigorate the story and keep children excited about collecting the toys. In many of these cases, I found the alternate villain factions to be a more enticing playtime prospect than the armies of the main foe. While G.I. Joe was busy fighting Cobra, they also had to deal with the Dreadnoks. The Autobots not only had to contend with the Decepticons, they had to battle the Insecticons too. And even Star Wars expanded beyond the central conflict between the Rebels and the Empire by introducing the Bounty Hunters in 1980. Meanwhile, on Eternia, He-Man and his allies had been engaged in an ongoing battle with Skeletor and his evil warriors since 1982, when a new enemy stepped into the fray in 1985. The Evil Horde were a band of dark demonic creatures that are commanded by their supreme leader Hordak, who is just as interested in plundering the mystical secrets of Castle Grayskull as Skeletor is. When this evil Eternian faction was first introduced into Mattel's Masters of the Universe toy line, the grouping featured 4 different action figures, yet their ranks grew in the following years, and the Evil Horde became one of He-Man's most formidable enemies. So in this video, we're going to take a look back at every single Evil Horde toy produced for the vintage Masters of the Universe toy line. Stay tuned.
Come with me, toy fans.
Hey toy fans, my name is Tony and welcome back to the Analog Toys YouTube channel. Although the Evil Horde were introduced into the main Masters of the Universe toy line in 1985, at that time Filmation, the animation studio that had produced the hugely popular cartoon, were moving on to She-Ra's animated series, so it was decided to make the Horde the villains in this new show. Banking on their earlier success with the Masters of the Universe cartoon and toy line, Mattel bet big on this new evil faction by introducing 5 Horde action figures and a large playset during their first year on toy store shelves. Initially, the Evil Horde included the leader Hordak, the hairy henchman Grizzlor, the evil spy Mantenna, and Leech, the master of power suction? All of these evil warriors wear a Horde symbol denoting their allegiance, with this insignia featuring Hordak's face with bat wings on either side. The Horde's home is the Fright Zone, and this forbidden fortress was offered as the toy line's main new playset for 1985. Product marketing informed children that the Evil Horde were out to destroy Eternia, and that they didn't care who got in their way. And I always appreciated these types of action figure subgroups that could do battle with both my good guys and my bad guy action figures.
Do not threaten me, Skeletor!
In the mythology, Skeletor was once Hordak's evil apprentice, until he trapped his teacher on another world, believing that Hordak would never find his way back to Eternia. No wonder this guy looks so angry. The Hordak action figure has been produced with a grey and black colour scheme with red accents, yet he wore mostly blue in the cartoon, where he also had a more mechanical looking face, as opposed to the bone mask sported on the toy. Hordak features the common spring-loaded waist play feature, that had been a trademark of the Masters of the Universe toy line since the very beginning. Hordak's clip-on chest armour has a red vinyl cape attached to the back panel, and the earliest examples of this figure have red painted ribs on the armour and a painted red bat on the back, with these extra paint applications being absent on subsequent releases. Grizzlor is a kind of updated Beastman figure, and he is notable for having his torso, head and shoulders covered in thick brown fur. His name implies that he is inspired by a grizzly bear, and due to the inclusion of all his fur, this is one of the few action figures in the original Masters of the Universe toy line that has no waist articulation. Grizzlor also wears a yellow harness with the red Horde symbol attached to his chest. Hordak and Grizzlor are both pretty cool action figures, but I'm not that crazy about the next two. Mantenna is certainly one of the weirdest characters in the Masters of the Universe toy line, and when you consider that Mattel gave us a fisting action figure, that's really saying something. Mantenna has a large head with ears made from separate pieces of flexible PVC plastic, and a fun play feature where a child could manipulate a lever on his back and make his eyes pop out of his head. When the lever is activated, the eyes not only pop out but also extend upward on stalks, somewhat like a periscope. Mantenna is Hordak's spy, and the character was originally designed with 4 legs, And even though the eventual action figure only had 2 lower limbs, you can see that the creators actually sculpted 4 legs and fused each pair together to simplify the production process. Despite this manufacturing shortcut, Mattel did feature 4 individual legs in the Filmation animated series. The 4th Horde character to be included in this opening volley of Mattel action figures is Leech. This evil green monster is one of the larger action figures in the original Masters of the Universe toy line, and Leech sported suction cup hands and a suction cup mouth. The mouth suction feature works the most effectively due to the inclusion of a button on the figure's back that could be used to pump air out of the cavity, and it works really well on smooth surfaces. Unfortunately, the incorporation of this play feature hinders Leech's posability, with him having no articulation at either the waist or the neck, and it's a real shame, because when you look at Leech face on, you stare straight into his massive gob, when all of his best sculpted details can only be seen from side on. In fact, Leech's wide open mouth kinda reminds me of... no, not her. That master of power suction.
Why, all the mumbo jumbo?
All of the first 4 Evil Horde figures came armed with crossbows that feature a simple firing mechanism, even though they did not actually shoot any projectiles. Each one has been produced in a different colour, and they all feature unique heads sculpted onto the tip of the bow. When you consider the staggering amount of parts that were consistently reused during the early years of this toy line, I must commend Mattel for giving each of these crossbows a distinct look, which suited the character that wielded them. There is another figure that was actually released the year before, which is technically part of the Evil Horde. Making her debut in the She-Ra Princess of Power toy line in 1984, Catra was originally intended to be She-Ra's nemesis in the animated series. Yet when the Evil Horde were introduced as the main antagonists, Catra's character was altered for the show, with her becoming another of Hordak's minions. Also released in 1985 we have Modulok, the evil beast of 1,000 bodies. Although this figure was released during the same year as the first 4 founding members of the Horde, I believe he was the last figure to be designed that year, and that's because he does not appear in the earliest Evil Horde marketing material. In fact, Modulok's inclusion in the Evil Horde may even have been an afterthought, because this is the only Horde figure released in 1985 to not be armed with a crossbow, and he does not feature the faction's signature bat symbol. Perhaps this is why he is also absent from the first Evil Horde television commercial.
The Evil Horde has no friends!
The Evil Horde, new from the Masters of the Universe collection. All figures each sold separately.
Let me out of here!
From Mattel.
Unlike the rest of the Evil Horde action figures that were sold on blister cards, Modulok was sent to retail in a solid box, likely due to the large number of components included. Modulok came with 22 individual body parts, including 1 torso, 2 heads, 2 pairs of arms, 3 pairs of legs, and numerous connecting sections that could be plugged together in multiple different ways to create a variety of different looking creatures. The figure also came with a 2-piece laser rifle, so that if you wanted to use the various body parts to create 2 creatures, you could arm both of them. I never had Modulok in childhood, so my first experience of assembling this toy occurred very recently when I acquired him for this video. This was quite the challenging exercise because many of the joints were so tight that I had to use a lot of force to either push the parts together or pull them apart, and it made me wonder how a 5-year-old would manage this. So whilst conducting my research, I wasn't surprised to learn that in a 1985 LA Times article about the best and worst toys of the year, Modulok was given a Most Frustrating Toy award because of this issue. According to David Kappa, Mattel's Director of Marketing for Boys Toys, initial Modulok shipments were a little stiff in terms of the pieces connecting. The plastic stretches over time, making it easier to play with the figures. In addition, the problem was corrected as of October 1985 shipments. So perhaps I acquired one of these early release examples, or maybe Modulok's just a really rubbish toy. He is certainly my least favourite Evil Horde figure because the omission of that iconic Horde bat symbol means he doesn't display well with the other members of the faction. And the art on the back of the box, which encourages children to create over 1,000 different monsters, always reminded me of the action figure version of the Kama Sutra. The Fright Zone was the 3rd major playset to be introduced into the toy line after Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain. Of the 3 major playsets depicted in the Filmation cartoons, the Fright Zone toy looked least like its animated counterpart, which was a more biomechanical type location, rather than the creepy rock pit simulated by the toy. It's also the most underwhelming of the bunch. In my eyes, no playset can top the near-perfect design of Castle Grayskull. And while Snake Mountain is a very frustrating toy, it is still a playset, even if all the business was at the front, with absolutely no party happening at the back. The Fright Zone, on the other hand, is more of a diorama than a playset, making it a great display piece, but it certainly would have been a better toy if there were just a couple of extra play features incorporated into the final design. What we do have though is the rock monster trap that is activated when a figure steps on it, with their foot falling into a pit and being trapped by a kind of rock-looking mouth sort of thing. Then there is a prison cell with a locking door that can be released by using a lever that is located at the top right next to the sinister tree. If a figure climbed the stairs on the side of the playset, they could access the upper level, but if they got too close to the tree, it would grab them in its branches, with this play feature being operated by a pair of spring-loaded levers attached to the base of the trunk. The one play feature accessory that everyone remembers though is the Beast Monster puppet, even if a few people seem to think that it came with Snake Mountain and not with the Fright Zone. This puppet is very difficult to acquire today due to the thin latex rubber construction that deteriorates over time. And as you can see, my example is on its last legs, with splits and cracks all over it. Yet back in the 80s, this would have been the most fun part of the playset, as a child put their hand inside the puppet and then have it make surprise attacks on He-Man by bursting through the hole in the sidewall. As was always the case with the Masters of the Universe toy line, the Fright Zone was sold in a box with some absolutely incredible artwork. And the final detail worthy of mention is the sculpt of Hordak's face that is seemingly carved into the stone facade, so that no one would mistake this trap-filled stronghold of terror as being anything other than the home of the Evil Horde. The Fright Zone rounds out the 1985 Evil Horde lineup, yet there was one other toy advertised that year that never made it into full production. According to the write-up on this catalogue image, the evil robot was planned to be a servant of Skeletor and his evil warriors, yet due to the bat insignias on his chest and knees, this prototype looks much more like a member of the Evil Horde, hence his inclusion in this video. In 1986, Mattel added several new toys to the Horde lineup, including 4 new action figures, 1 smaller playset, and a couple of creatures. Of the 4 action figures, we received 3 new characters and 1 alternate version of the faction's supreme leader Hordak. Where the figures from 1985 were all mystical type creatures, the 1986 characters were more technological, likely due to the cybernetic design elements used to depict the Evil Horde in the She-Ra animated series, and Dragstore is a perfect example of this. Dragstore was advertised as the transforming evil warrior vehicle, and his biomechanical design included an engine and exhaust ports mounted on his back. He also had a single wheel fitted in the centre of his torso, and this figure's play feature utilised a ripcord to power his internal gears and make him shoot across any smooth surface at rip-roaring speed. Yet Mattel's claims of this figure transforming into a vehicle are quite misleading, because all he does is hold his hands up in the air and faceplant. If any child of the 80s received this toy hoping it would be anything like a Hasbro Transformer, they would be sorely disappointed. Although Dragstore isn't that difficult to find on the secondary market, most figures offered for sale are missing the ripcord, and if you want a complete example, you'll need to ensure this accessory is included. Dragstore was also the last Evil Horde figure to ever be issued with a crossbow, which is a shame, because it is one of the better Mattel accessories in the line. Next up, we have the first real troop builder of the entire Masters of the Universe toy line. Kids and collectors alike all love a good army builder, and the Horde troopers fit the bill perfectly. These troopers are the evil robot minions of Hordak's army, and Mattel knew that these types of figures would sell really well, so they added a yellow blast graphic onto the card back, telling kids to collect an army of Horde trooper robots. This type of character was also an exciting addition to the cartoon, because it allowed our heroes to destroy these robots en masse, without breaching any children's television censorship rules. With so many Horde troopers seen getting smashed up and crushed in the She-Ra animated series, it made sense that Mattel would incorporate a battle damage play feature into the action figure. When He-Man punches the button in the centre of the robot's chest, the torso collapses, leaving the Horde trooper in a mangled state that could easily be reset, allowing for repeated destruction of the same robot, over and over again. I never had the Horde trooper in childhood, but I can tell you now that I would have had a hell of a lot of fun with this action figure's play feature. The Horde trooper's grey armour makes them look like futuristic knights, and Mattel did not reuse any parts when designing this figure. Every single component used to produce the Horde trooper required brand new tooling, and that included their red translucent spear accessory. Multibot, the evil robot of 1,000 bodies, uses the Modulok Build-A-Figure concept, and it makes much more sense for a robot to be able to swap around its body parts than an organic creature like Modulok. This is also the second action figure in the Evil Horde lineup alongside Modulok to not feature the Horde's iconic bat symbol. Where the toy design of Multibot differs from Modulok is with the inclusion of a second torso section, so you can create a type of Siamese twin android, and I had a much easier time assembling the parts on this figure, with Mattel seeming to have improved the tight joint situation this time around. Multibot was sold in a solid box just like Modulok, and the inclusion of this second torso meant that children could create one robot with conjoined body parts, or two complete separate robots. Multibot was even the star of his own television commercial, which also featured Modulok, with Mattel suggesting that children could combine the parts of both of these figures to create a giant robot monster. While I'm not a big fan of this snap-together action figure concept, I do find Multibot to be the more enjoyable figure of the pair to display. The new variant of Hordak issued in 1986 did not mark the first time in the toy line that a key character received an action figure makeover, with both He-Man and Skeletor having multiple figure variants by this point. It does however speak to just how popular Hordak had become during his first year in the line, as no other characters outside of the main hero or villain had been offered this treatment. Hurricane Hordak is also a gorgeous looking action figure, thanks to his moulded on armour being painted in a glorious metallic gold. This version of Hordak is in some ways more similar to his Filmation counterpart, due to his right arm being shaped like a cannon, a weapon which he often sported in the animated series. This new arm was Hurricane Hordak's main play feature, as it came with 3 attachments, as did Trapjaw before him. And since this cyborg is my favourite action figure in the entire Masters of the Universe line, I never need much of an excuse to dust him off for a random video appearance. After you attach the accessories to Hordak's arm, you turn the wheel on the figure's back to make his wicked weapon spin, and he comes with a 3-headed thunderball mace, a 4-pronged battle shield, and to allow him to fly, we have the Batwing propeller.
Holy travel agent, Batman!
I have always preferred the classic look of these action figures over their gimmick-centric variants, yet if you are going to collect all the different versions, you'll find few better looking than Hurricane Hordak. If you grew up throughout the 1980s like I did, then you'll definitely remember the slime craze that swept across popular culture like a toxic green tidal wave. And when slime was first introduced into the Masters of the Universe toy line, it was branded with the Evil Horde logo. This lime green coloured slime was supplied in cans and was available for free with the purchase of 2 action figures. Mattel had been selling slime products since the 1970s, and during one of their design team's brainstorming sessions, they came up with the idea for the Evil Horde Slime Pit playset. This simple toy featured a bone claw hand that was used to trap action figures, and then children could pour the slime through the skull at the top and all over poor Spycore. This was a fun proposition for us kids, but a nightmare for our parents who had to clean this goop out of the living room carpet. Several characters in the Masters of the Universe toy line were known for riding animals, and Mattel gave the best mount of all to the Evil Horde. Mantisaur carries Hordak into battle, and this evil insectoid steed is the most imposing in the line. This creature is designed to look like a giant biomechanical praying mantis that is armed with a laser mounted on his tail and outfitted with a saddle for Hordak to ride on. In the She-Ra cartoon, Mantisaur was depicted as a green creature, yet I am glad that Mattel produced the toy in a totally different colour scheme, because he now matches his rider, and they look great on display together. Mantisaur's main play feature is his trapper arms, that are designed to pick up enemies and carry them away. At least that's what Mattel wrote on the box, but when I lift a figure up using these arms, I can't help but think that Mantisaur is about to eat He-Man for lunch. I never knew of this toy until very recently, but if I had owned one in childhood, Battle Cat would have been tossed to the side pretty damn quickly. Both Panther and Battle Cat were serviceable enough during my playtime, yet their lack of posability was a letdown. And Stridor was a downright disappointment, because when I saw him on a toy store shelf, I was convinced I'd be able to move his legs. So when I received the toy that Christmas and finally realised that the limbs were permanently locked in place, it was soul destroying. Yet Mantisaur has 4 articulated legs, 2 movable arms, a movable head, and a towering silhouette, and this is a really great toy. Monstroid was the other, much larger creature released in 1986, and this mechanical crab-type beast has a wind-up play feature that makes him spin around and knock over his enemies. Monstroid, the roid that ain't got time to bleed. New from Mattel. By 1987, the Masters of the Universe toy line was beginning to lose steam, and as such there were only 2 new Evil Horde figures released that year. The first was Buzzsaw Hordak, who looked much more like the original version of the action figure from 1985, and this edition of the figure has saw blades that shoot out of his chest. The final Evil Horde figure ever released was the fan favourite Mosquito, and this character has a very striking design, with his head and eyes bearing a striking resemblance to the Mantisaur creature released the year before. Mosquito, the evil energy-draining insectoid, was clearly inspired by a mosquito, and he featured a long pointed robotic nose and a play feature that pumps blood around his torso by way of a push button located on his back. An early incarnation of this action feature appeared in Mattel's 1980 Gregory Vampire Bat, and it's been used to gruesome effect here, making Mosquito an ideal addition to the Evil Horde lineup. Being able to stand out in a toy line as weird and wonderful as Mattel's Masters of the Universe is never easy, yet Mosquito achieves this through his top-notch design and brilliantly bonkers head sculpt. And I just love him. He could very well be my favourite Evil Horde action figure. In 1988, Mattel began shifting gears by focusing on action figures inspired by the Masters of the Universe live-action movie, and this marked a downturn in popularity for the toy line. Yet this decline in interest could have happened earlier in the decade, if it weren't for the introduction of popular new characters like those of the Evil Horde. When the Evil Horde was introduced in 1985, it represented a major revival of interest in He-Man at that time, which gave the Masters of the Universe brand a well-needed retail boost. With some truly iconic characters that have stood the test of time, the Evil Horde was composed of some very creepy-looking villains, and they captured our childhood imaginations. While Hordak may not be as instantly recognisable as He-Man and Skeletor, he is definitely up there in popularity with other characters like Orko and Trapjaw, and alongside the rest of the Evil Horde, they are definitely worthy of addition to any vintage Masters of the Universe toy collection. So thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video you can click the links over here to check out some of our other vintage Masters of the Universe content. Or you can subscribe to the channel by clicking here, or consider supporting us on Patreon, where you'll get access to hours of exclusive content. I'm Tony from Analog Toys, and I have the power.